Hello everyone, so welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create simple block. But the beauty about this block is, as you can see, I can make a like, I can make a comment, but I also have the editor Markdown to create that block. As you can see in here, if user not as an admin, user cannot create a block. So I'm going to sign out. So I'm going to log in with my admin account. So let's take a look in here. I'm going to sign in. And then I'm going to use my admin account, which is my chandev account right here. I'm going to click that. And as you can see on the top right here, we have new post button. So that means if I admin, I can basically create new posts. I can click that. And as you can see in here, I can just preview the markdown content in here. That's super nice. Let's try to put the title in here. For example, what is static site generation? And for the content, I just want to paste this markdown content in here. As you can see, we have heading 1, heading 2, list, and also code in here. So let's try to click preview. As you can see here, the preview is super clean. And then I can toggle this basically, super nice. I can check this to publish immediately. So let's try to click create post. And now as you can see, we have this block right here. It's render, super cool, right? I can like my own blog post. I can just click the detail. As you can see here, I still like it, super nice. And then I can log out and try to log in with another account. Let's try to sign in with another account. So I'm going to use my Lucas Parker account in here. And then as you can see, I'm logging with another account, and this is just normal user. So normal user cannot create a post. So that's why the button is gone. And then of course, it still can like the post. And then as you can see, if I click the block, and then now I can write a comment. So for example, I'm going to paste this comment here, just click post comment. As you can see, now the comment is right here. If I refresh, of course, the comment is still right here because this is come from the database. Super nice. I can also go back in here, go to another post, for example. I can just do whatever I want in this comment as well. So let's try to just copy and paste that comment in here and try to just click post comment, and as you can see, this is right here. That's super cool. You can use this template to create your own blog if you want, and this is totally free. I'm gonna put all the code on the description, but don't forget to just like this video and subscribe this channel. It's mean a lot to me. So I'm really excited for this video. Hope this video is not gonna be too long, and let's get started. Let's generate brand new Next.js application. I'm gonna call this a simple markdown block. So let's hit enter. TypeScript, I'm going to say yes. ESLint, yes. Talent CSS, definitely. I'm going to use Talent CSS in this project. Source directory, I'm going to say no. App Router, of course, yes. TurboPack, yes. And import alias, I'm going to say no. So let's cd to the simple markdown block folders. And from here, I'm going to open inside my VS Code editor. So next, let's try to install and set up Prisma in this Next.js project. So I just want to follow along this block right here that I've written, installing and configure Prisma in Next.js App Router. So let's see. The first thing is we need to install the Prisma as a dev dependency. I'm going to copy the command, open terminal, and then just paste that like this and hit enter. And after that, we need to say npx Prisma init to initialize the Prisma. So let's go back in here and then just paste that npx Prisma init. This basically will generate the Prisma folders, and then we also have the environment variable. So let's take a look. Just wait for this initialize until it's done. And as you can see, now we have this Prisma folder, and also we have this .env file. Okay, so I just want to remove all this comment just like this. And then let's try to go back. What we need to do next is we need to basically make sure the database URL is matched. So let's go back in here. It's basically the database URL that automatically generated using the Prisma init. So I'm going to paste this database URL right here. It's basically come from my PostgreSQL on my local. So as you can see, if I open my, let me see, if I open my PostgreSQL in my local, this is what I have, right? And as you can see, I just want to stop that and see right here. So this is basically my PostgreSQL user, which is Postgres. That's why in here I put Postgres, and this is the password. Password is basically random password. And then the PostgreSQL is running on the localhost 5432. And the database that I'm going to use is Markdown block, or let's just try to change that. I'm going to say Markdown block dash YouTube, just like this. So after we set the database URL, the next thing is we are going to define the schema. So I just want to follow along this document, this block right here, just to make sure everything is set up, right? Next, I'm going to change the schema. So anyway, let's try to go back to Prisma right here and just try to paste this really simple schema. As you can see, that have a user and posts. And also the next thing is we need to run npx prisma generate. I'm going to copy that and just paste that down here and hit enter. And also the next thing is we need to run the npx prisma dbpush. Just run it like this and everything is fine. Great. So now what we're going to do, let's try to run npx prisma studio. This is just to see the database on the studio Prisma, as you can see in here. Basically we don't have any modal. I'm not sure. Oh, what the hell is going on? Yep, the reason is because I'm not save this schema Prisma. So let's try to save that and we can run npx prisma dbpush again. And then after that we need to run the npx prisma studio. So let's try to run it. And now hopefully, as you can see here, we have the post and user model, right? Everything is empty. And the next thing is we are going to create the, let me see, this one right here. So we need to create this prisma.ts file. I'm going to copy this and then go to I'm going to create lib folder. And inside the lib folder, I'm going to create prisma.ts file, and then just paste this right here. So anyway, we don't yet install the Prisma client. So let's try to install this package right here. I'm going to copy the name of the package and open another terminal in here. And we can say npm install prisma/client. And then after it's done, so let's take a look in here. We still get the same error. So let's try to see on the Prisma documentation. And as you can see in here, basically it say we can import the Prisma client from the generated Prisma. So it means if you go to schema.prisma, as you can see in here, it is basically the output of the generated Prisma client. And then we can use this one into the prisma.ts right here, that we can use the Prisma client. So let's try to just remove this import from the Prisma client. And then now we are going to import that from the generated/Prisma right here. Because now we have this app/generated and then /Prisma. So we can use that in here, right? Cool. So just follow the documentation and everything should be fine. So now we can run the app by running npm run dev. And then let's take a look. I think next I'm going to get the user data, for example. So I'm going to copy this and then go back to page.tsx. I just want to close everything, go to the page.tsx right here on the home. And then I just want to remove everything and then just try to import the user right here. User set equals to await for the Prisma, right? .user.find many. And of course, I'm going to change the component to the async component like this. Just put h1, let's say h2, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Hello world, and then I just want to console log the user. So if we get empty array, right, it means it's successful. So let's try to go back and then I just want to open the localhost 3000. Let's try to see on these terminal here. As you can see, we have this empty array. That means we have that data, right? So it means the Next.js and Prisma is connecting successfully. If I go to the Prisma Studio, go to user and try to add new record, as you can see, this is auto increment. The email I'm going to say edit at whatever, right? Doesn't really matter. And the name I'm going to say John, and let's try to save that. Let's try to go back to create next app here. I want to refresh, and as you can see, now we have this data. Okay, that's just to checking the Prisma and Next.js working. So the next thing is we are going to install the shadcn UI. So let's go to ui.shadcn.com and click get started. And of course, I'm going to use Next.js and then just follow all the instructions. So first, I'm going to initialize the shadcn command right here, npx shadcn add lattice init. This basically will initialize shadcn. I'm going to use neutral for the base color. You can choose any color you want. And as you can see, now we have this component.json file, and also we have the global.css updated right here that have this theme, as you can see, that have color background and etc. These all the variable that we can use to our application, right? So by default, we put this background, BG background by default on the body and etc. So the next thing is, let's try to run the app. We can do npm run dev. And of course, I'm going to remove the Prisma right here and also on the top. And the function right here, I just want to leave just normal function without async function, just like this. As you can see, this div is have a minimal height to screen and background to background variable. So if you want to see what the value on this background variable, you can go to global.css. And then here we go. This is basically the value. You can go to the root, and then you can just change this color to whatever the color you want. For example, you can change that to red color, save that. And now let me just refresh this one. I think this error is because the Prisma red. So now as you can see, we have the background red. You always can change the color on whatever in here. You can change the accent color, you can change the secondary color, anything you want. So anyway, I just want to copy and paste this really simple header like this. And as you can see, this have link. Link should become from the next link, and should be have is admin variable. So I'm going to create that on the top right here. Const is admin. I'm going to set that to true, right? And we have button. So this button is basically come from the shadcn component. But first, let's import the plus circle from the Lucid React. So let's try to install the button component from the shadcn. Open another terminal in here. We can say npx shadcn add lettuce add button. All right, it's done. So let's try to import the button component. Come from the component UI and the button. So let's try to save, and as you can see, we have this new post button on the top right here. Really nice. So let's try to make it bigger so you can see every code in here. Really simple. This have a border bottom, and this div is basically have container, and make this container to the center and have padding and etc. This is just really simple things. And let's take a look. Next, we need to create the out button. Out button is just a button for login. So let's try to create that on the component. So here I'm going to create out-button.tsx, right? Let's do rfc, change that to out button, just like this. Just make sure we import that on the page right here, just like this. So now we should see this out button on the top. Great. So let's try to create really simple out button. So I'm going to change this div right here into button component, come from the UI/button. And for the text, I'm going to use sign in, just like this. And also for the variant, I'm going to use outline. Save that, and let's take a look. This is the sign in button. So now let's go back to the page.tsx, and under the header tag in here, I'm going to create main tag. And inside in here, let's put a class name that have container, mxauto, px4, and padding y to 8. And inside in here, I also have another div that have class name. Let's put this class name, maximal width, I'm going to set that to 2xl, the mxauto, and space y to 8. And inside in here, basically, I'm going to put the heading one and the paragraph. Let's just paste that like this. As you can see in here, this div is basically have text center to make sure the heading one and p tag should be on the center. Let's save. Let's take a look. As you can see, this is the result. Really simple. So under the div tag right here, I'm going to put the condition. So as you can see, if the loading is true, I'm going to render this div with text loading post. Or if the post.length have a 0, I'm going to render this no post yet and etc. And else I'm going to put all the posts that render this PostCard component as well. So let's try to see here on the top. I'm going to create a const. Let's do post. The post is empty for now. And also let's try to see in here. I'm going to create a loading. So let's do const loading. I'm going to setting that to true so we can see what happened if the loading is true. Let's say true, just like this. And as you can see, we get this error. Variable post is implicitly has any type. It's fine for now. I'm going to just render heading 1 and to say hello. Okay, so let's try to save that and let's take a look. As you can see, if the loading is true, we have this loading post right here. Just text, really simple. And if the loading is false, let's try to say loading false. What happened? So now we see this no post yet, create your first post, because the post here is empty array, right? So it's better if we create a dummy post so we can just see what happened if we have posts, right? So I'm going to copy and paste this dummy post right here. So anyway, I'm going to just put all the code on the description on my GitHub account so you can just check that out. So here I'm going to export this variable dummy post that have an ID, title, content, and etc. All right, so let's try to get the dummy post. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to set the post set equals to dummy post, right? Just like this. So now let's try to save that. And as you can see, we have hello, 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 hello. It's basically for hello because the data here is for data. So now let's try to create the postcard component so we can just styling the card of the post. So let's try to render that like this. Let's try to create the postcard. Anyway, I'm going to put that on the component folders. And inside that, let's create a post-card.tsx. Let's try to do RFC, change the component to postcard like this. And now we can just use that in here. Just import it. And here we go, we have postcard. As you can see, it's like a post and key. So the key is basically just for make sure that we don't get any error. As you can see, if I remove, we get this key prop for element and etc. So let's just put the key. So now we need to get the post. So let's just get the individual post in here. And then basically I'm going to use card component from the shadcn UI. So let's go back to shadcn and just find the card. So let's search for the card component. And then basically this is what I'm going to use, right? So let's just copy the comment right here. And then let's try to paste just like this. How do we use that? It's pretty simple. I just want to copy all of this and just paste that right here. And of course, we also need to copy and paste the import component on the top. So let's copy that and just paste that on the very top of the component. Let's do that. Here we go. So now let's try to save that and let's take a look what we have. So the result, it should be look like this. So let's try to make this a little bit better. So the first thing is I just want to close the terminal in here. And for the header, so basically I'm going to render this div. So this div is basically have class name flex and item center. And as you can see, we have this avatar component as well. So let's try to take a look on the shadcn UI and search for the avatar component. This one right here, right? This look nice. So let's try to install that component. I'm going to copy that and just paste that down here. So anyway, you always can pause the video and try to understand what's going on in that code, right? So as you can see in here, I'm going to import the avatar from the UI, avatar image from the UI, and avatar fallback from the UI as well. So basically what happened in here is if the avatar image is not available, it will basically render the avatar fallback. Just like that. Let's take a look in here. As you can see, the example. Let's try to see in here. As you can see, we have the image and also the name right here. Still inside the card header, this card header right here, I'm going to render the card title. So after this div, I'm going to render the card title like this. And inside that, I'm going to put this link. So we can just click the link to see the detail of the post. So let's import the link from the next link. And then let's try to save that. Let's take a look what happened. Here we go. So anyway, we can always styling the card title in here if you want. For example, here, I'm going to say class name into text to XL, for example. Let's save. Let's take a look. Here we go. All right. So on the card footer, basically, I'm going to render two button like and button comment. So first, I'm going to add class name display flex item to center. And also, I'm going to add space x to 4 like that. So inside in here, I'm going to put two button. Let's do button. The first and the second one, I'm going to copy and paste. This is basically for the like button. I'm going to use heart from the Lucid React. And then I'm gonna put span. It's basically the like count, for example, 10 like for now. And the second one is going to be the comment. So I'm gonna use message circle. This was basically icon for the comment, right? And also I'm gonna put a span, and this is basically the count of the comment. So I'm gonna do let's say 5, for example. Save that and let's take a look what we have. As you can see, for the like we have 10 and 5 for the comment. So let's try to make this a little bit look nice. So on this button, I'm gonna put the variant to ghost. The size is small and the class name display flex, item center, and space X to 1. And also I'm gonna put that same props on the second button like this. Let's try to see the result. As you can see, it looks nice, right? So next, let's see what happens if I click. So I want, if I click that, it should be have color red. Let's go back in here and just try to add condition in this hard component. So on the hard component, I'm gonna put this class name with condition. As you can see in here, class name, heading 4, width 4, and if the like loading, I'm gonna put the animate pulse. So let's try to say like loading in here. I'm gonna do cons like loading to, for example, I'm setting that to true so we can see the loading. And then for the like in here, I'm gonna setting that to false for now. Cons like set equals to false. So I hope you can see the animate happen. So I'm going to make it bigger. So as you can see on this like here, it's basically have just really a simple animation going on right here, right? And then let's try to make sure now I'm gonna setting that to false, and then the like, I'm gonna setting that to true. So what happened if I like the post? The style should be look like this, super nice, right? And then what the next thing I'm gonna add is on the message circle in here. So I just want to paste this really simple class name with height and width as well. All right, nice. So we already create this UI for the homepage. So now let's try to working with the authentication. So I'm gonna use Next.Auth for now. This one right here. Why I use this Next.Auth? Because this is free. You can just use that without any limited, right? Just use that, it's free. So let's take a look on this get started. And then the first thing is we're gonna install the Next.Auth package. So let's just copy this command and then go back. Anyway, we have some error going on in here. I just want to remove that. And then it's better if we add maybe commit first, right? Git add all and then git commit. I'm gonna say git on commit -m initial. Great. So now let's working with authentication. Let's go back in here. Let's copy, paste that. It basically will install the Next.Auth package. And then after that, we are going to see what we are going to do next. As you can see here, we need to add API route. But this example is using pages, but we using app router, right? So let's take a look in here. If you are using Next 13.2 or above with the new app router, which is what we are going to use, right? What we using. So we can see this guide right here. Just click that. So let's take a look here. Basically, we are going to create the API /out/array and ..next-auth and then route.ts file. I'm going to copy this one and then go to the app, just paste this. This basically will create API folder, auth folder, next-auth with array folder, and then route.ts file. So let's just copy everything, just paste that like this. So the next thing is what we are going to put on this Next-Auth right here. What we have to put on that. So basically we are going to go back to the documentation right here, and as you can see we have to create the out option and then put that out option inside the Next-Auth right here. Let's try to just copy everything in here, and I like to just put the out option on another file. So let's just put it on the lib, and then in here I'm going to create out.ts file. Just paste that like this. And of course, we already exported. Cool. So instead of using GitHub, in this case, I'm going to use Google Provider. So let's take a look how we can use Google Provider. So let's go to providers and then just find any provider you like to use. You can use Facebook, GitLab, and anything you want. I'm going to use this Google. So anyway, this is the way we're using that. Pretty simple. I just want to copy that and just paste that like this, right? Just import the Google provider from the NextAuth /provider/ Google. I'm going to copy that and just paste that on the top. So we can just fix that error just by putting explanation in the end of the environment variable name, just like this. So now, of course, we have to put the Google Client ID and Google Client secret. Let's go back to environment variable. And in here, I'm going to put the Google Client ID. Let's take a look again. Right here, we need to import the out option that we already create from the lib/out into this row. Just like this, and we're done. So anyway, it's pretty easy to get the Google Client ID and Google Client secret. You can go back on the documentation in here, and as you can see, it is basically the way we get the client ID and client secret. And I also have another video for that. I'm going to put a link on the description. So anyway, just pretty simple to get the client ID and client secret. After you get that, just put the value on the environment variable. I just want to copy and paste that like this. Here we go, right? Just make sure you get your own Google Client ID and Google Client secret. Nice. So now how we can log in. So let's take a look on the documentation, because sometimes the documentation is changed. You always go back to documentation. Let's take a look how we can log in. Let's click the getting started. And then in here, we already installed the Next.Auth, right? We already create the API route. And then the next thing is we need to wrapping our layout with session provider. So I like to create a session provider on the another component. So let's try to just open the component, and then inside the component folder, I'm gonna create a file called providers.tsx like this. Let's do RFC. As you can see, I just want to paste this provider, right? Really simple component. This component should be run on the client side. As you can see in here, I'm wrapping the children using session provider come from the NextAuth/React. So basically, it's like on the documentation say. So let's try to run the session provider in here, the provider component into the layout. Let's go to the app and then layout. So we need to wrap the children here with that provider basically. So let's do that like this. And of course, we are going to put the children inside the provider like this. Just import the provider and here we go, we're done. So the next thing is, let's try to see. This is basically how we can log in, how we can add React hooks. So we can get the use session, we can get sign in, we can get sign out. Okay, so let's try to use the sign in. So anyway, I'm gonna go back to the way we run the sign in is basically on the out button.tsx. This is basically the sign in component, right? So let's try to import everything in here. I'm going to just copy everything and just paste that. Right, and what I'm going to use in here is the sign in. So let's try to add on click event in here. As you can see, we can just running the sign in like this, really simple. So let's do that, run a function and then running the sign in just like this. So inside of sign in, we can put any, as you can see, provider that we can use. We can use Apple and etc. A lot of things, because we set up everything in Google, so we can use Google, of course, in this case. So let's search for Google. Here we go. Let's try. As you can see in here, we have the error because this component should be run on the client because we use on-click event in here. So let's do use client like this. Let's try to go back and try to sign in. If I click that, now as you can see, it just redirect me to the list of the Google account that I have, so I can just log in. But it's not work for now because we don't yet specify that the adapters that we're going to use, because we're using adapters Prisma. Of course, we have to setting up everything with Prisma. So let's click Prisma, and this is basically how we can set up Prisma with NextAuth. Let's take a look. We already installed the Prisma client, right? And now we need to install the out Prisma adapter. Copy that package name, and then we can do npm install out/Prisma adapter. And then the next thing is we already installed Prisma, just skip that step. We already create prisma.ts, just skip that. And now we have to put the adapters on the out basically. So I'm gonna copy this and go back to the lib and then out.ts. This is basically the out option, right here. I'm going to put this adapter set equals to Prisma adapter and put the Prisma come from the /Prisma that we initialized right here basically. Okay, nice. So the next thing is, I think we're done. So let's take a look at the schema. So this is really important. You have to create schema that match right here. For example, you're using PostgreSQL, you're using MySQL, SQLite, MongoDB, etc. But we're using PostgreSQL in this project, right? So let's click that. As you can see, this is basically the schema that you have to copy and paste on your Prisma schema. And as you can see, this is require. So you have to put just like this. And the name of the schema here, for example, user, you have to put as a user, account, you have to put as account. Otherwise, it's not gonna be works, right? And of course, you can always add another field on the user. For example, you want to add a role field, you can always do that. And then this one here is optional, so you don't have to putting that. This is just optional. So anyway, other than that, this one right here is require. So you have to putting that on the let me see, on the schema.prisma file right here anyway. So let's try to create the schema. So let's try to remove this model in here. I'm going to just get the model from the documentation in here. So I'm going to create my own user model, as you can see in here, model user that have an ID, name, email verify, image, role. This is new, right? If you see on the documentation, the require is ID, name, email verify, images, and account, session, right? We don't have this role on documentation, but I adding that, so it's fine. We can do that. And next, let's try to create the account model down here. So on the account, we have the ID, user ID. As you can see on the documentation here, we have the user ID, type, providers, provider account ID, refresh token, access token, etc. We also have that right here, refresh token, access token, etc. And also for the session, I'm going to create my session right here, model session, right, that have session token, user ID, expire, and etc. And also we have the verification token. This is really important. So I'm going to copy that and paste that right here. As you can see, we have this verification token. And then we also have another model like a post, comment, and likes. Let's try to create that down here. So on the post, we have the ID of the post, and we have the title, the content, the publish, the author ID, create ad, and update that, etc. So inside a post, we have basically comments and likes. So let's create the comments model. So as you can see, it is the comment model that have ID, content, and post ID, author ID, create ad, post, and author, right? Also, the last thing is let's create the like model. I'm going to just paste this like model. As you can see in here, we have the ID of the like, and it's basically have connection into the post ID and the user ID. Just that's it. So because we changed the schema of the Prisma, we have to run the generate down here. So we can run npx Prisma generate. And then after that, we need to run the db push. So npx Prisma db push. And after that, let's run npx Prisma Studio. But as you can see, we have the error right here. So I believe that I'm not running my Postgres. So let's click start. Let's try to do that again. npx Prisma db push. And as you can see, we have this warning because some data will be lost because there's a new model right here. So I'm going to say yes. And here we go. Great. So now let's try to run npx Prisma Studio just to see the database table. So let's try to see that. And here we go. As you can see, we have this account, a comment, like, post, session, user, and verification token. Super nice. We have all of that. Great. That means the schema is updated. So now let's try to log in. I'm going to go back to the project. And as you can see, everything is empty right now, right? I'm going to just close this NextAuth, and then let's try to go back to the project. And in here, I'm gonna click sign in. As you can see, it will redirect me to the list of the Google account that I have, and then I'm gonna click this Google account, and let's see what happened. It will redirect me back to the root of the application, but nothing happened. So let's take a look on the database right here. I'm going to refresh, and hopefully, as you can see here, we have one user that logged in, right? This is basically the ID, the name, the email, images, and etc. Right? We have the data, super nice. On the session, we also have the data. On the account in here, we also have the data. Super great. Let's take a look how we can make sure that we check if the user already logged in. It's pretty simple, basically. Let's go back to app, and then I believe it should be on this header in here, right? The sign in should be changed, and I believe that it should be rendered on the out, right, component, and then out button. So this one in here. So this button, it should be changed after I log in, right? So let's try to check that first if I log in or not. So we can use session basically. So we can just grab the data and the status from the use session hook. And then in here, we can just check that. So first, I'm going to check if the status is loading. I'm going to return this button loading right here. And then if the status or the session doesn't have value, I'm going to render this button sign in. That means if I'm not logged in, it will show this button sign in. But if I already log in, it will show the another component in here. For example, now I'm going to say div and then say, I'm going to render the json.stringify the session. Let's try to do that and let's take a look. As you can see in here, I already log in, and as you can see, the user.name is John and the email is this one right here, the image and etc. That means we already log in. So in here, basically, I like to put like a drop down. So I'm going to use the component from the shadcn. I'm going to find the drop down menu, this one right here. It's super nice, I think. As you can see, if I click, it just basically show the link that I can click. For example, in here, I like to, if I click that, it will show the sign out button basically. So let's try to install that component. So I'm going to copy this and then just running that in here. npx shadcn let us add drop down. So the way we're using that, it should be pretty simple. This one right here, I'm going to copy all of that and then just paste that right here. And of course, we have to import the component on the top like this. Let's try to see what happened. Let's go back in here. As you can see, we have the drop down. So inside the drop down trigger, I'm going to remove the open text in here and just paste this button. So as you can see, we have this button with variant goes, and inside the button, we have the avatar component. I'm going to import the avatar image, and avatar fallback as well. So let's try to save that. Let's take a look here. As you can see, we have this image. That's super nice. I can click that. Looks super nice, right? And also for the drop-down menu content, I'm going to change everything in here. So basically, I just have to drop-down menu item. As you can see in here, the first drop-down menu item is this div right here that have the session.user.name and then session.user.email. And then the last thing is this drop-down menu item is basically have text sign out. If I click that, it will run the sign out function from Next-Auth basically. Let's try to see what happened. So if I click this, as you can see, you have this. But as you can see on this avatar icon in here, if I click that and click outside the avatar, as you can see, we have the border right here. I don't like that. So the way we fix that is pretty simple. We have to put as child on the drop-down menu trigger. So we have to put as child props, save that. And now, as you can see, that's super clean, right? Nice. And also for the drop down menu content, we can just also add some props on that drop down menu content in here. For example, I put the class name, the width, I'm going to set that to 56. The align, I'm going to set that to N, and force mount to true. As you can see now, it should be look like this. Super nice. If I click sign out, of course, now I'm signed out. So now what I'm going to show you is how that we can create new posts. So for example, I'm going to click this new post button. As you can see, now we on the admin/create. We don't have this page, right? So let's create that page. let's go back in here. I'm going to just maybe make a commit first. So I can say git add all and then git commit. So I'm going to put message add authentication, just like this. It's fine. So now let's open out, and then inside app folders, and inside the app folders we need to create basically admin folders, and inside that we have create folders, create, and then we need to create the page.tsx file. Here we go. So in here we can do rfc, change the component name to whatever you want, and then now let's try to save. Then as you can see, we have create post page right here. So first I'm going to add class name on this div, minimal height to screen, and background to bg background. And inside in here, basically I'm going to put a really simple header that have back to home button. So I'm gonna paste that like this. As you can see here, we have this button, and then link come from the next link, and arrow left from the Lucid React. So let's try to save this, and as you can see, we have this back to home button. Really simple. And under the header, I'm gonna put the main tag. So let's do main, and then let's put a class name on this main. I'm gonna set the class name to container, mxauto, px4, and padding y to 8. And inside that, I have also another div that have maximal width. So let's put div that have class name with maximal width to 4xl and mxauto as well. So inside in here, basically we have a title and also the button for the preview and edit the markdown. So I just want to copy and paste this div right here. As you can see, it's basically have this heading one, create new post, and we have this button. If I click that, it basically will set the preview to false or true, whatever. And here we have to create basically the state on the top right here. So I'm going to set by default is going to be false because we're using useState in this component. Of course, we have to change this component to the client component. So we can do use client on the top right here. Save that, and let's take a look what we have. As you can see, we have create new post on the right and button preview on the right side. So basically, we can just toggle this button. So under this div right here, I'm going to put another div, right? So this div, it should be have class name. This class name is grid column 1, and on the large screen, grid column should be grid column 2. And inside in here, I'm going to put basically card. So let's try to go back to the shadcn and just search for card component. And then basically, I just want to copy and paste this example here. Copy that and paste that like this. And also, I'm going to copy the card again right here. So basically, I have two cards, right? This card right here, this is basically for the text area editor, and this one right here is basically for the preview. Because I set this to grid column 2, of course I have like a 2 column on the large screen. Let's try to just copy the importing on the top right here. Let's try to save and let's take a look. This is the result, right? So as you can see now, the preview in here is not working, so let's try to make that work. So here basically we have the preview that have value false and true. So I'm going to render this second card based on that value. So I'm going to add condition in here. If the preview is true, I'm going to render the card. So let's just put all the card inside that condition. Here we go. So now we can just preview it like this. You can also just add like a class name in here. If the preview is false like this, you can make this expand like a right here on the class name. It also works basically. Just do whatever you want, it's fine. So the next thing is what I'm gonna do. Let's try to create the form on this card right here. So let's go to this card, and I just want to remove the card action and description. For the title, I'm gonna do write post. Let's say write post. And also for the content in here, let's try to create a form tag. So here I'm gonna do form tag like this. The action, I just want to remove that. And inside the form, basically we have some div. So this is basically the first div. As you can see, we have a label and input. So I believe we don't yet have this label and input component from the shadcn UI. So let's try to install that component. So here you can say npx shadcn add letters, add label, input, text area, and also switch as well. Text area, switch component as well. So let's just install all that component. So let's try to import the label from the add component /UI and also the input as well. As you can see in here, we have to create title and set title state on the top right here. And here we go. I have a title and also content state. So let's try to save that and let's take a look the input of the title. This is going to be look like super simple and super clean. Let's go back in here, and another div is basically for the text area input field. So I just want to copy and paste like this. We need to import the text area from the component UI. And then as you can see here, we have the error text area is not defined. Import that. Here we go. Super nice. Let's take a look. Here we go. We have that title and also the content right here. As you can see, we don't have the space between the title and the content. So let's go to the form and we can add space in here. So I'm going to put class name space y26. Let's take a look. Now we have that space. And also let's create the switch button down here. I'm going to move to the bottom right here. And basically we have this div that have display flags, item center, space x to 2. And also we are going to render the switch component. And as you can see in here, the check is true when the publish is true. So we have to create the publish and set publish state on the top. So let's create the state on the top right here. And by default, it should be false. So let's try to save that and let's take a look what we have. As you can see, we can just switch this publish immediately and everything should be works. Super nice. And next thing is the button. So let's scroll it down. So still inside the form tag, I'm going to put this button component. As you can see, button with type submit. And then this button will be disabled if the loading is true. So let's create the loading state on the top. So by default, the loading, I'm setting that to false. Let's take a look what happened. So it's look like this. So anyway, I'm going to remove the cart footer. In this case, I don't need that. So let's scroll down and the cart footer, I just want to remove that. And here we go. Looks super clean. So anyway, I set the column to 1 if the preview is false. If the preview is true, I set the column to 2. So this is basically how we can do that. It's pretty simple. Just add this condition. If the preview is true, put the large grid column 2 and gap 8 right here. As you can see, I can just toggle like this. That's super nice. So here, now let's try to handle the create post button right here. So the first thing is let's go to the form, and in here we are going to handle the on submit. It should be on submit. And then in here, I'm going to create a function called handle submit like this. So let's create the function on the top. Here, let's create cons handle submit set equals to arrow function. For now, I just want to console the title and the content. Just like this. Let's try to see on the console and hopefully we get all the data. So here I'm going to open a console and then let's try. So here I'm going to say post 1 and this is Markdown. Let's try to click create post. As you can see in here, basically we have the title and also the content. But as you can see, the browser is reload because we don't yet handle the event in here. So we can grab the event. It should be event like this, I believe. So we can say e.prevent default. And then now if I do just random things in here, click create post, and as you can see, now we have this data on the console. That's super nice. So now I'm going to add really simple validation in here and also just really simple try and catch. As you can see in here, it's basically we'll check if the title and content is empty, just return nothing. And then set the loading to true when I click create post. And then in here, a running try and catch. So here is basically is wait for the fetch in this API route. But first we need to change the function here into async because we await in here. So we can do async like this. And then we make a post request on this route API/post, right? The method is post. This is the header, content type application JSON, and also the body. We send the title, content, and publish. And also, if everything is okay, just push the user to the root of the application. So we run router.push in here. So anyway, let's try to create the router variable. So we can do router set equals to use router from the next navigation, like that. And then down here, if something wrong happened, just console log failed to create post. And then finally set the loading back to false. Now we need to create the API/post route. So I just want to copy this one right here, right? Or I think just the post. I'm gonna copy that, go back to API, and then in here I'm gonna create the post/route.ts. Here we go. I'm going to create post function like this. As you can see, export async function called post. So by creating like this, we can make a post request on that API/post. So in here, what I'm going to do, let's try to say try and catch. And inside of try, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the title, the content, and the publish, because this is basically what we send on the body. And then that's why we can grab that from this request basically. So we can do like cons, we can grab the title, the content, and also the publish. So we can get everything in here from the await and request.json, just like this. So now let's try to maybe console log that, console log the title and content and publish, just like this. And down here, we need to basically make a response. So we can do return next response. And then in here, you can put anything you want. For example, I'm going to put JSON.json success. I'm going to say true or whatever you want to send. Let's try. Of course, we need to import the next request type from the next server as well. Let's try to go back in here, and I just want to say title 1 and content 1. All right, let's try to click create post. As you can see, we have that loading, and then it redirect me to the root of the application. And then let's try to see what happened on the terminal. As you can see in here, we have the title is content 1, right? And also we have the content is content 1, and the publish is false. So let's try to make the publish true. For example, I'm going to change this to 1 and 2. The publish, I'm setting that to true like this. Let's try to create post. And then as you can see here, we have the title 1, content 1, publish true. Everything works. So in here, what we're going to do is let's try to add new data into the PostgreSQL using Prisma ORM. So anyway, I can just paste this like this. As you can see, this is basically running await Prisma.post, because we are going to add something on the post model, post table. And then here we're running .create. And then we send data. What data that we are going to send is title set equals to title, content set equals to content, publish set equals to publish. By default is false. If user not send publish, it will send false. And author ID is basically come from the user that log in. And include is basically what the response that I like to have when I make a post request. So it basically will show the author name and image as well as a response when I make a post request. So how about the user? So anyway, the user ID here, it should be come from the Next.Auth, right? So I like to, you can just check that right here if you want, right? If user login or not, and you can get the user.id. But I like to create another file to handle all of that. So now I'm going to create another folder inside the lib folder. I'm going to call that utils folder. And inside the utils, I'm going to create out.ts file. So in here, I just want to paste this really simple function that basically will running get server session. So this is basically the way we get the user value for the server component or server function, right? So in here, I just return the session.user. So let's try to run the get current user into the route right here. So I'm going to call that inside this post function in here. Let's just running like this, const user set equals to wait for the get current user. But as you can see, we don't still get the user ID in here. I just want to comment that first. And then I just want to see what the response for this user, what the value on that user. So let's try to console log user, and let's try to create new post, right? So this is will run, and this is will console log the user value, and we can see the value on the terminal basically. So let's try. Here I'm gonna say random things. I don't care about the value. Create post, and then as you can see, nothing really happened. As you can see, we have the undefined value. What the hell is going on? Let's try to take a look in here. So I think the problem is because we don't log in. So let's try to go back in here, try to sign in, and then I'm going to use my Google account in here. So let's try to click login. As you can see, I already log in. So let's try to create a new post right now. So here I'm gonna typing random things, create post, and then as you can see down here we have that value. We have the name, email, and image. We don't have the user ID, we don't have the user role, right? So how that we can make sure the user here, it should be have the ID and also the role. So the way we adding that is, let's go back to auth.ts. This is basically auth option variable that we paste to the Next-Auth right here basically. So just make sure you go back to that file, and then in here we need to put the callbacks. So let's try to, I just want to copy and paste the callback and try to explain to you what happened. So this is basically the callbacks, and as you can see, the first thing is I running the session and then I run the JWT. But as you can see in here, we have this error because this auth option don't have type. So I'm gonna put the type come from the Next-Auth option. Next-Auth option type should become from the Next-Auth basically, and I just want to import the type of that. Here we go. As you can see, any error it should be gone, but as you can see, the ID and role is have an error. I'm going to fix that later, but as you can see, first is I running session, right? And in the session, I run this function, async function that grab the session and also the token. As you can see in here, I check if the session.user and token.sub have a value. Basically, I set the session.user.id into the token.sub. So first, we get the ID from the token.sub, and then I put that ID into the session.user.id, right? So we get the ID now. And then next thing is I just check on my database. As you can see in here, I use prisma.user.findUnique to check on the database where the ID is equal to token.sub, and then select the role to true. This basically will return user that have same ID. And then in here, if we have the user in here, for the session.user.role, I setting that the role in here come from the user. If the user have a role admin, for example, this will be admin, but by default I setting that to user. And then finally just return the session. And then right here I run JWT because on the session we already have the ID and we already have the role. If user have a value, set the token.uid into user.id, and then just return the token. And by default, session have strategy JWT. Great. So how about this error? So anyway, I'm gonna put this declare type on the top right here. So now as you can see, the declare module Next-Auth interface session, for the user, I adding this ID and role. So now the error, it should be gone. So we don't have any TypeScript error. Really nice. So let's try to take a look on the road in here and try to see what the response we have inside the user every time I make a post. Let's try. Here I'm going to make a post, create post, and then as you can see here, we have the error. What happened here? Invalid callback GWE, JWT session error. What happened here? So finally, I found the error. As you can see in here, we have this Next-Auth error, JWT session error. So basically, we have to put the Next-Auth secret environment variable because we're using JWT, and this is required for JWT basically. So I'm gonna copy this command here, npx auth secret, and just paste that to the terminal. And now, as you can see on the environment variable, we don't have that Next-Auth secret, right? When I try to run this one, this is basically will automatically create the auth secret, but it will create on the environment.local is fine. I'm going to that out and put on the same .env file. So I just want to remove the .env.local. So let's just delete that. Here we go. So now hopefully everything should be running perfectly fine. So let's try to go back in here, and I'm going to try to sign in again. And let's try to create new posts. And hopefully, let's create posts. Hopefully right here, as you can see guys, we have the name, the email, the image, the ID, and the user. The user is the role is basically user. That's super, super cool. So we have that value. So anyway, let's try to go back on the utils/out right here. I'm going to create another function. Basically, I'm going to create a function called require admin. And in here, I'm running the user set equals to await get current user on the top right here. As you can see, if we don't have the user and the user.role is not admin, just throw this error, admin access require, and then otherwise just return the user. So this is basically what we are going to use, require admin function. So let's go back to the road and then just put that right here, require admin, just run it. And then now we should get the user ID in here, just to make sure that just admin can create a post, as you can see here, right? That's super nice. But anyway, this chandev, it should be the chandev account. It should be a have role user. I'm gonna change that into my studio, Prisma Studio. I'm gonna go to my user table and then just try to change the role. So here I'm gonna change the role instead of user. I'm gonna change that to admin and save the change. Here we go. So now, of course, this user should be have value because now I'm logged in with my chandev account, right? And then also we can create new post right here. And then finally, we can just return the post as a response on this next response. I just want to paste this like this. And also for the catch, if something wrong happened, I just want to try to say return next response.json, and then the error is failed to create a post and the status is 500. So before we create new posts right here, I just want to make sure that all posts that render, it should be come from the database, it's not come from the dummy data. Let's try to go back to the app/page.tsx. As you can see, all the posts come from the dummy post file. So now I'm going to create state basically. So first, I just want to get the session come from the use session hook. As you can see here, we have the session, and then I create the use state. So first I create the post and then loading. So now I can just remove this loading and post like this. Just remove the dummy post on the top and then import the post from the generated Prisma here. And then down here, we can basically make a fetch request. So I'm going to create basically fetch post function. This is basically async await function. As you can see, I'm running try and catch. And then in here is basically a wait for the fetch API/post. This is basically a row that for get all the posts I'm going to create later. And then in here we have the data respond.json and then set the post into the data come from the respond API. And then if something wrong happen, just console error. And then finally set loading back to false. We also make sure fetch post will be run on the first render. So we're putting that on the use effect that have empty dependency. And also I'm going to create the variable is admin set equals to session.user.role equal to admin. This basically is admin will be true. So I'm going to remove is admin variable on the top. And let's try to see, of course, now it should be error because we not change the component to the client because we're using use effect and use state. Of course, this component it should be use client. And here we go. As you can see, there's no post yet, but as you can see, we have this error. The reason is because we don't really get any data from the road because the road is don't exist for now. API/post it doesn't exist. So let's try to go to API/post. As you can see, we have that road file, but we don't have the get function in here. So we cannot make a get request, of course. So I'm going to create that on the top right here. So basically I just want to paste this get function. As you can see, this export async function called get, and then running the try and catch. Really simple. So in here, I just running prisma.post.findMany where the publish is true, right? If the publish is false, I'm not going to return anything. So let's include the author, name and image, the count, comment, and likes, and then order by create at descending, and that's it. You can also return this error variable, but for now I just want to remove that. It's fine. Great. So now we have this get, and then as you can see, it's make a get request in this fetch basically. And then let's try to refresh, and of course everything should be empty. So now let's try to create new post. I'm gonna click new post, and then for the title I'm gonna put this getting started with Next.js, and for the content I just want to put this paragraph content just like this. So let's try to make sure we publish immediately and create post. As you can see now, guys, we have that post that render in here is written by Chandev, and we have the date, we have the title right here, and then the card content now is just empty. It's fine. But as you can see, the like and comment is come from the dummy, I believe. So let's try to fix that. I believe should become from the postcard component, and then we can just fix that right here, as you can see, right? So first I'm gonna make sure that the post right here, it should be have the interface. I'm gonna put this interface, as you can see, interface post that have ID, title, content, create ad, and the author we have name and image, and also the count we have comments and also likes. So let's try to put this post interface right here. So I'm going to say post and then put that post right here. So now we can use the post.count.comment and .count.like into the right here, into down here, right? Into the span right here. But first I'm going to put all the value into the state. So first I just want to paste this one right here. So first I'm going to get the session from the use session hook and then create some state right here, like state, like count, and like loading. So I'm gonna remove everything on the top right here because I'm gonna put that as a state right now, right? So because we're using use state, I'm going to change the component into the client component, use client like this, and just make sure I'm gonna put the like count right here. The default values become from the post.count.likes, right? We have the value, and then I'm gonna put the like count into the where's the count right here, right? The likes. I'm gonna put that like this, and then now let's go back, and as you can see we have this 0 value. So for the comment, of course it should be also come from the post dot count. It should be underscore count, I believe, and then dot comments like this. And now we have 0. So now I'm going to working with the form when we create a post. As you can see in here, we have this content, and also we have the preview, right? The preview now is not working. As you can see in here, if I put, for example, heading 1, let's say hello, we don't have any value, anything happen on the preview. So let's try to create that preview. Let's go back and then go back to the, I believe, admin and then page, right? So down here we have the preview. So let's take a look right here. This is the preview basically. So let's try to create that preview. I'm going to remove the card description, card action, and for the card title, let's just put this preview like this. And also for the footer, I just want to remove that. And for the card content, basically in here, I'm going to render another component inside that. So for now, I just want to copy and paste. As you can see here, inside the card content, I have head div basically with space y24. This basically will make a space between the heading 2 and also the markdown render component. Right, we have the title, and also we have this markdown render with content props. So we don't have this markdown render basically. So let's try to create that on the, let me just go to the components and then create a file called markdownrender.tsx. Here we go. So here we can say RFC. I'm going to change the component name to the markdown render, and then let's try to import that on this admin page.tsx. Here we go. So as you can see, we have this error because we don't basically set any props in here. It's fine. Let me scroll up a little bit. As you can see, we have this on submit error. The reason is because we're using event, and then it's not assignable to type form event handler. So here, instead of using event, we're going to use form event, I believe. So now let's take a look. There's no error. Super nice. Let's take a look on the Markdown render. I'm going to create the Markdown render component right now, because as you can see, if I click preview, this is what will happen. As you can see, it's not automatically show the content. Let's try to grab the content as a props in here. So now what I'm going to do is let's wrapping the content with the React Markdown component like this. And of course, we are going to import that React Markdown from the React Markdown package, but we don't have that suggestion. So let's just put the content inside that and then import. We don't have the suggestion. I don't know why. So let's try to import manually on the top. And also just make sure this component, it should be client component. And here we go. We have to use client on the top and import the React Markdown and wrapping the content like this. So inside the React Markdown, we need to send some props basically. So the first thing is the Remark plugins. We are going to use Remark GFM in here like this. And also we need to put component set equals to this should be an object, and then we are going to styling any markdown format we want, like heading 1, heading 2, and etc. So let me just paste this right here. As you can see, this is really simple. Basically, for heading 1, I grab the children and then wrapping the heading 1 inside the heading 1 tag with text3xl, just to make sure the heading 1 it should be bigger and the font is bold and margin bottom, etc. And put the children in here. And for the heading 2, I set the text to 2xl is more smaller than heading 1, and also heading 3 just xl. P tag I using this leading, relaxed, etc. And for the UL, OL, and black quote, and pre, and code, and etc. Great. So now let's take a look in here. There's no error. Let's try to see. Let's go to preview. I'm going to put heading 1. Heading 1 with Markdown is hashtag. I'm going to put post 1. As you can see, now this is basically heading 1, right, with text3xl. For the heading 2, let's see. Post 2, this is for the heading 2. And also I'm going to change the title into this is just for example. All right, we have the preview, right? And then now let's try to create the post. I'm going to create post, and then as you can see, this is just example. Super cool. And of course, in here, we need to render the content, right? It's not just cart content, but the content itself. So let's go back to cart content, I believe, postcard component. Instead of just render the cart content in here, we need to render the actual data from the post. Because we already have the Markdown render component, we can just put it like this, and it just works basically. Let's try to save that, and the content, it should become from the post.content. So let's take a look on the top. I'm going to create a variable called post, and then as you can see here, I just sliced that post content 0 to 100, and plus this post content length more than 200. I'm gonna add these 3 dots basically. Really simple. Let's take a look what happened. Here we have the post 1 and post 2, right? We have the content as well. On the admins, let's create /page.tsx. We have some errors. Let's just remove the import cart action, cart description, and cart footer as well. Super nice. Everything should be clean. And for the postcard, we're going to work with this, right? And for the page.tsx, let's take a look what happened in here. Why we still have this red color, but there is no error. This one right here. So anyway, the type is not matched. So I think for the post type, I just want to copy and paste come from the postcard, but you always can basically create another file for the interface. It's also fine. I just want to copy and paste to make it simple like this, and then just make sure the post, it should become from that interface right here. So now the error, it should be gone. As you can see, it's clean. The next thing is I'm going to show you how we can handle the likes, because in here, if I click, nothing happened. So let's try to scroll down and let's take a look where the heart is rendered. This one right here. So basically in this button, I'm going to put the on-click event and also the disable. This will be disabled if user not login. If user login, the disable, it should be false. And also when I click that love button, it should be running the handle like function. So let's try to create that on the top. Cons handle like set equals to an arrow function like this. And this should be async function basically. So I'm going to say async like this. So what I'm going to do on that function is first I'm going to check if the user not login, just return nothing. If user login, try this fetch request. So as you can see, it's basically make a post request on the API slash post slash whatever the ID and then slash like, right? And then just put the like value on the set like state and then count to the set like count. And then something wrong happened, just console error. Super simple. Let's try to save that and let's try to create the post ID slash like. So here, let's go to API and then post. So inside a post folder, let's create another folder called ID. This is basically for the post ID. And then inside that, I'm going to create like folder. And inside that, we are going to create the road.ts file. So here, basically, I'm going to paste this code. As you can see, this is basically make a post request, but we need to require authentication in this road. So basically, I'm going to create require auth on the libutils auth file. Here, let's try to create that function. I'm going to paste that in here. As you can see, this function is just basically really simple. It's just checking if user login or not. As you can see in here, if user not login, just return this error right here, authentication require. Really simple. And in here, we're using that when we make a post request on that like. As you can see in here, we got the user and then also we get the ID, right? And then here we check if the user already like or not. As you can see here, accessing like is basically running the prisma.like.find unique where, as you can see, this basically will check two conditions. The first thing is the post ID equals to ID, right? And also the second one is the user ID come from the database is equal to the user.id come from the user.login. So if the existing like is true, as you can see here, is basically will be delete that like. It will running the await.prisma.like.delete is basically will unlike the like, right? I hope that makes sense. And just return that response in here, like equal to false. But if the user is not like that post, it's basically will running the prisma.like.create and then adding this data basically. If something error happen, it just return the next response. Super simple. You can just try to understand what's going on in here. It's super simple. Let's try to make a like. Here, as you can see, everything should be fine. And then let's try to click the like. So as you can see, if I click like, we have this number 1, right? If I click that again, the number is 0. It works basically, but I like the color. When I like that, the color, it should be red color. So the way we do that is I'm going to create another route to handle that basically. So basically, I'm going to create another function called fetch like status and run that function into the use effect. And then put the dependency post.id session.user.id. As you can see on this use effect, basically I running this fetch like status. I doing this because when I like, right, when I already like that and then refresh, I still like that post. So the color should be always red even when I try to refresh the browser. Right, so this will always run every time I reload basically. So as you can see on the fetch like status function, we do checking first. If user not login, just set the like loading to false and just return nothing. And then if user login, as you can see in here, I running try and catch. So as you can see in here, it's basically making get request on the API slash post ID slash like status. We don't have yet, right? So let's try to create that folder. So here on the ID, we need to create folder called like status and then file called road.ts. Here we go. So we have two right now, like and like status. Great. So on here, I just want to paste this really simple get function. As you can see here, the first thing is I check if user login or not. If user not login, of course the like it should be false. And then here I grab the ID of the post, right? And then here I check existing like. So here is basically running prisma.like find unique, where it's basically check again two things. First is if the post ID equal to ID come from the params, and the user ID equals to user.id.login, I'm going to send the like into existing like, right? If the existing like have a value, of course this will be true. If the existing like doesn't have value, of course this will be false. And of course the catch, really simple, just return JSON error and etc. Super simple. Let's try to basically like that. I'm going to refresh first, right? This is my post that I've written, so let's try to click like. As you can see now is red color. The reason the color is red because here, as you can see, let me just scroll down. This like here is true, right? So let's take a look on the top. The set like is basically run down here on the use effect. So that's why every time I refresh, this is still red because this is run on the first render. So basically the like functionality is done. So let's now working with the detail of the block so we can working with the comment. So here, as you can see, if I click, of course, nothing happened because we don't create the page, right? So let's try to create that. I'm gonna close everything. Let's try to go to app, and then we don't have the post, right? So let's create that. We need to create post. And then inside that, we need to create the ID, basically the post ID. And then inside that, we need to create the page.tsx. So here I'm going to do RFC. Let's try to save that. And now hopefully we see this page, right? It works. So anyway, I just want to paste this really simple component. As you can see, it's called a post page that have this use state. Because we're using use state, of course, this component should be use client component. And if you have this interface, the interface in here, it should be matched with the page right here, and also with the, I believe, come from the component postcard. As you can see, the interface is matched. It's better if you put that on another file, but it's fine for me. As you can see here, it's basically have fetch post function that basically make a get request on the API /post/ whatever the post ID, and then set the post come from the API into this post variable come from the state. And then as you can see, we don't run the fetch post where we have to run that. Basically, we need to running that on the use effect on the first render. So I'm going to run that on this use effect, but first I'm going to make sure that we have the params.id. So the param should come from the use param. I'm going to create that on the top right here. Param set equals to use params, right? And then if we have the params.id, run that fetch post right here, just like this. As you can see, the loading value by default is true. And then when the fetch post is done, the set loading back to false, right? So that's why in here, I'm going to check if the loading true. I just want to render this loading right here, loading post, really simple. And also if we don't have any post, right? If we don't have any post, I just want to also render this really simple return JSX right here. And here we go. As you can see, we have this button that say page not found, and then back to home as well. Link come from the next link, and arrow left as well. So let's take a look what happened on the browser. As you can see here, we have the post not found. Basically what render is right here. All right. If the post doesn't exist, it will render this one right here. Why the loading is not rendered? The loading is rendered. As you can see here, if I refresh, we have the loading post, and then we have the post not found, right? Because here, as you can see, by default is true. So that's why the loading is going to be show first. And then this fetch post will be run because the use effect right here, right? This is will run. And then finally, as you can see, after remaking a get request, the set loading is false. That's why the set loading will be gone. And then now the no post will be rendered. So now let's take a look how we can create the post/id route. As you can see in here, we have the API /post/id, and then inside the ID we have to create a route.ts. So I'm going to create that file road.ts. As you can see, the road.ts should be inside the ID folder. So here I'm going to paste this really simple get function. As you can see, I just want to show you everything. I hope you can see that. And this is basically get request. First is get the ID from the params. And then next thing is basically find unique where the ID for the params is equal to the ID from the database, right? It's basically ID equals to ID like this. But because we have same field name, it's fine, just put ID, and then the publish should be always true. As you can see, the response should be include outer name and outer image. And also the count also include comment and likes. And also right here, if there's no post, just return this error. And then if everything fine, you get the post, return that post right here. Super simple. Let's try to go back in here and try to refresh. Hopefully now we have that data. As you can see, we have that page. That means we have that data, because now as you can see, if we have data, just put a div with the page text right here. So for the return, I just want to paste this div right here. As you can see, it have minimal height to screen and the background is background. And also here we have the header that have this link back to home. And also we have this main tag for the detail of the block. It's container, MX auto, etc. So we have the postcard component, and then finally we render the comment section component. But for now, I just want to comment that. So let's take a look what happened. And here we go. As you can see, we have that content render, but the problem is, as you can see, 3 dots right here. Basically, not all content is rendered. So that's another problem. So I think I'm going to send these props right here. So full content props on the postcard. So I just want to get that props in here. Let's do show full content. And also I'm going to put that type in here as well. So let's create the type. The type here, it should be a boolean. And I want to make sure that the show full content is should be optional, right? And by default, I'm going to setting that to false. This is just true on that detail post basically. So let's take a look here. As you can see, the way we render the content is right here. So in here, we need to add condition. If we on the show full content, we have to put all the content basically. So in here, I'm going to add this condition. As you can see, if we on the show full content, just render all the content. But if the show full content is false, just slice the content. Really simple. And also for the title here, as you can see, by default, we have this link, right? When I click that, it just shows this link. Of course, on the detail, we don't have this one. So also in here, I'm going to add that condition as well. So as you can see, if we on the show full content, just show the post title. If we not on the show full content, just show this link. Super simple. Let's try to save that and let's take a look. Here we go. As you can see, now all the content is rendered. And also this title is not link. This is just normal text. So now let's working with the comment section. Let's go back to the page right here. And basically, I'm going to uncomment the comment section component. Let's try to create that component on the component folders. Let's create file comment section.tsx. And here, let's do RFC. Change that name to comment section. And we are going to import that on the page, basically. Let's try to import it. And as you can see, we have this comment section down here. Nice. Let's try to working with the comment section component. So for the styling, I just want to create dummy comment for now. So let's try to paste that on the top. As you can see here, we have dummy comment as an array. And inside that, we have this ID, content, create, add, outer, name, image. So we are going to map that dummy content on these component basically. So for this div, I'm going to add this class namespace y26, and also inside that I'm going to put the heading tree basically. So let's try to put the heading tree. This basically the comment length, as you can see here, comment length. But I like to just create a variable called comment set equals to comment dummy or whatever the name, dummy comments, right? Dummy comments like this. So now we have the comment.length. Let's take a look. As you can see, we have comment 2 in this case. And under that heading tree, let's map the comments. I just want to paste this really simple card in here. As you can see, it's basically have space y4. That means each comment should be have space 4. And in here I use card. Let's try to import the card content, and the avatar come from the UI/avatar, the avatar image, and also the avatar fallback as well. As you can see, this is basically super simple. You can pause the video and write a new one if you want to learn how to code. As you can see here, it's basically rendered. That's super nice. We have the comment, the image of the user, the name, the date, and also the comment itself. So the important thing in here is basically the input field. So we need to create the input field so user login can create a comment, right? So first, I just want to paste this session on the top right here because we're using use session. I have to change this component into the client component. So we can say use client like this, right? And now we have the session value. So I just want to check in here if we have session value, also render a form field. As you can see, we have really simple form in here with just text area and button. As you can see here, I just want to import text area and also the button component. As you can see here, if I click the button, type submit right here, it's basically on submit handler, submit function will run. But we have to create the new comment and also the loading state on the top right here first. As you can see, we have new comment and also the loading. I'm going to import the use state like this. And also the handle submit, let's create on the top right here. Cons handle submit set equals to an arrow function. And then just put like this for now. As you can see, there's no error. And let's take a look what we have. As you can see, we have this really nice input field. And this basically will disable if there is no value. Super nice because we put this as a disable when new comment.trim doesn't have any value. So now let's take a look how we can create the handle submit function. Of course, this will be a post request. Let's just paste that right here. As you can see, it's basically a async await function. The first thing is we prevent the default when we click submit. And then we check if there's no value on the comment field, just return nothing. And then set the loading to true. And on the try and catch, as you can see, we basically make a post request. As you can see, the method is post on the API /post the post ID /comments, right? We don't have yet, so let's create that. But first we have this comment right here, error, because we don't yet have that comments, right? So let's create that comment state. So I just want to paste that like this. Now we have two comments from the dummy comment and comment from the state in here. So I'm going to remove the dummy comment. This is just for the styling stuff. Let's try to also remove the dummy comments on the top right here. We don't need that for now. Great. As you can see, these comment types, we are going to create that interface on the top right here. The comment, it should have an ID, content, and create, and author, name, and image. But how we get the post ID? Remember on the page.tsx, we already sent the post ID here, right? So we can grab that on the props. So we can do like this, post ID, and the type of post ID is basically string. So let's put a string like this. It's fine. So we have post ID right now. So now we need to create the API /post /ID /comments. Let's go to API and then post ID, and then here we need to create comments folder, right? And then inside that we need to create row.ts. And here we go. So inside in here, I'm going to create first a post request function. As you can see here, we have post function, and we need to import the next request right here. We grab that. It should be require authentication. So user not authenticate cannot write a comment basically. So as you can see, we grab the user, and then here we grab the ID from the params, and then we grab the content as well because we send that content in here as a body. As you can see, content set equals to new comment. So that's why we can grab the content in here. And then finally, we need to create new comment data on the Prisma. As you can see here, we're running prisma.comment.create. And the data that we send is basically content. Post ID set equals to ID come from the params. Author ID come from the require out. and then it should be include auth select name and image. And of course, we need to just send this next response.json, send the comment. If something wrong happened, just show failed to create a comment. So let's try to create new comment. Here I'm going to refresh and then open the Prisma Studio so we can see new data in here. But my Prisma Studio is need to run the again npx Prisma Studio like this. It will run the Prisma Studio like that. As you can see here on the comment, we have 0 comment. Let's try to put a comment in here. I'm going to say great bro. Let's try to click post comment. Now, as you can see, we have this comment right here, but this is basically not come from the database. If I refresh that, it should be gone, because as you can see here, what happened is, let me just open the comment section. And then as you can see, if I click the handle submit, what happened is this set comment is basically put that new data. So that's why in here we have the comment that render down here. But it's not come from the database, it's just from the state. So that's why when I refresh, it should be gone. But the data should be on the database. If I refresh, as you can see, we have one comment here. This is the ID, post ID, author ID, the post that I comment, right? And also the author that read that comment, which is Chanda. So now how that we can get the data from the database? Super simple. Let's go back to the comment section, and then on the top right here, I'm gonna run the use effect basically. Let's try to import use effect. As you can see, this use effect is running the fetch comment function, right? And this fetch comment function is basically will make a GET request on the API / post ID and then comments, and then set the response data into the set comment state. And we're done. Of course, now on the comments row, we don't have the get request. So this is not going to be works, right? So let's try to create the get request on this comment row. I just want to paste this really simple get function. As you can see, we have the ID from the params. And then in here, it's basically will find all the comment value on the comments table. As you can see in here, it's check first if the post ID equals to ID from the params. Just return the comment and include the author name and author image, and order that by created at disk ending. Just return as a next response, and that's it. Super simple. Let's try to go back in here, and we should see the comments. If I refresh, as you can see, we have that comment. I think I'm going to log in with another account so you can see the beautiful block in here working. Let's try to, as you can see here, we have one comment, right? Super nice. Let's try to log out, and I'm going to try to log in with another account for now. It's still working, by the way. If I click this one, it still show the comment, but I cannot make a comment because I'm not logged in. So let's try to sign in. I'm going to log in with Maya Wayland's account in here. Let's try to continue, and then I'm gonna click this blog post right here. As you can see, if I click like, as you can see now the like is 2, and then I can write a comment, for example, awesome bro. Let's try to click post comment, and we have that comment down here. Super nice. If I go back, of course the comment is now is 2, and then we have like as well. Super cool. All right, so now let's try to create a new post, but I like to just want to remove this another post in here. It's look terrible. So let's try to click this one and just delete all of that. Delete that, and now it should be clean. All right, super nice. Let's try to create new post. For the title, I'm going to create the getting started with Next.js, and for the content, I just want to copy the Markdown content in here. As you can see, that have heading 1 styling, heading 2, and links right here, and also the bash as well right here. So let's try to take a look at the preview. As you can see, that's super nice. Let's try to publish immediately, create post. As you can see, we have that card post right here. Super nice. I'm gonna click that, and of course in here I can make a comment. So for example, I think I'm gonna comment with another account, right? So let's try to go back, and then I'm going to sign out. Let's try to log in with another account. I'm going to use my Lucas Barker account in here. Let's try to click this one, and I'm going to, of course, like that post and then try to write this comment. This helped me set up my first Next.js app. Thanks. Create post. As you can see here, we have that comment. Super great. I can go back and try to log in with another account as well. So let's try to sign in, and then I'm going to select my Sophia account in here. As you can see, I can just click this post and then try to write another comment. For example, I'm going to say great explanation of SSR and SSG. Let's click post comment. As you can see, we have the comment right here. It's come from the Sophia, it's come from the Lucas. That's super nice. I can also like it, of course, super great. I can go back, and as you can see, I still like that post. Alright, so hopefully this video helpful and you can write your own blog with this type of markdown content and just use that. It's free and the code, everything is on the description. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you on the next one.